said to you that Bam Adebayo now has Bobby Portis and Giannis Antetokounmpo on their front line with them, what you gonna say? You tell me a front line in the Eastern Conference that's better than that. In terms of rebounding, in terms of defense, Giannis can average 30 in his sleep. This is who he is. Miami is a top 4 team in the Eastern Conference.
Miami has never feared swinging big. Back in 2004, they traded for Shaquille O'Neal. 6 years after that, they landed LeBron James and Chris Bosh, building one of the most formidable super teams the league has ever seen. And now, after months of rumors and intense speculation, Pat Riley has done it again, but it cost them a massive fortune. The Heat sacrificed their young talent and nearly every remaining asset they had to pull off one of the absolute biggest blockbuster trades we have seen in years. But that is the steep price when a two-time MVP hits the market, especially for Giannis. He gives it right back to Kevin Porter Jr., then to Giannis. On paper, the Heat now boast one of the scariest duos in all of basketball. Giannis and Bam form what could easily be the best defensive front court in the league before coach Erik Spoelstra even draws up a single play. But you do not win titles on paper, and you definitely do not win them on one end of the floor either. Yet, here is the real catch. As dominant as Giannis and Bam are defensively, they both share the exact same glaring hole in their respective games. Miami has basically wagered everything on a roster built around two superstars who prefer to operate in the exact same spots on the floor. This is not the play-in Heat team we have watched limping along over the last 3 seasons. Instead, this is a brand new identity built around one of the single most dominant players of his generation. And the last 2 times Miami swung this big to land a future Hall of Famer, it ended with a Larry O'Brien trophy in the building. So, the question is simple. Can this updated version of the Heat actually pull it off again? After years of rumors and mutual flirtation, Miami has finally landed its main guy. Giannis Antetokounmpo is officially headed to South Beach. For 3 straight seasons, the Heat were stuck in frustrating play-in purgatory. They were good enough to sniff a playoff spot, but never good enough to actually scare anyone. Specifically, they were missing that one crucial piece almost every champion has a true number 1 option, and that is Giannis. Boasting 2 MVPs, a Defensive Player of the Year award, a ring, and a Finals MVP. Now, he is lining up right next to Heat captain Bam Adebayo, and this pairing is absolutely fascinating before you even get to the offense. It starts on defense, where Miami might already boast the best front court in the entire sport. Just last season, Giannis ranked in the 87th percentile in overall rim protection. He was in the 93rd percentile in rim disruption, the 74th in post defense, and the 68th as a help defender. There are very few players alive who alter shots like him. Then there is Bam. He landed in the 88th percentile in rim protection, the 93rd in rim deterrence, the 83rd in both post and help defense, and an insane 96th percentile defending screens. Indeed, he can body up a center on one possession and slide his feet with a point guard on the next. Between the two of them, they cover basically everything you could ever ask of a front court. Giannis brings the massive size, length, and elite rim protection, while Bam gives you what is probably the most switchable big man in the entire league. Put them on the floor together, and Miami can shut down almost any attack. And honestly, the most exciting part is what this defense could eventually grow into. Giannis already boasts one of the most impressive defensive resumes of his entire era. He has 5 all-defensive selections, a Defensive Player of the Year award, and he did most of it standing next to Brook Lopez, one of the greatest rim protectors we have seen. Bam is nothing like Lopez. For 7 years now, stretching back to when Bam took over as Miami's starting center, both the Heat and the Bucks have been absolutely elite at protecting the paint. However, they reached that level completely differently. Milwaukee built their entire scheme around Lopez planting himself in the paint, while Giannis roamed off the weak side, using his length and timing to clean up mistakes, while Miami went the other way. Instead of parking Bam under the rim, Erik Spoelstra turned him into the engine of an aggressive scheme, switching onto guards and hedging pick and rolls. He was blitzing ball handlers and covering more ground than almost any big man alive, making this defensive fit incredibly fun. Bam might not offer you that elite Lopez-level drop coverage, but you can make a serious case that he has been the best switching big in basketball for close to a decade. Now, he does not have to carry that entire defensive load because he has one of the league's best help defenders and rim protectors standing right next to him. Do not sleep on Giannis on the perimeter either. He spent his career in a drop-heavy system, but he is a monster switch defender in his own right. He possesses the size to easily hold up against centers, along with the speed to stay in front of quick guards and the elite instincts to fly in from the weak side to swat shots away at the rim. Together, they give Miami something they have not had in ages: two elite big men who protect the rim, switch out onto the perimeter, recover in space, and clean up the glass. Those defensive switches involving Giannis and Bam are literally going to feed families. Does that automatically make Miami the most switch-heavy defensive unit in the entire league? Not necessarily. After all, the Heat switched the second most ball screens in the NBA last season, with Bam alone switching 93 more times than the next closest player, even with Kel'el Ware playing plenty of traditional drop coverage. But that is the beauty of it. Spoelstra does not have to choose one identity. Both of these elite players can run every coverage in the playbook. That means Miami can easily alternate between switching and hedging, dropping and blitzing, or man and zone, sometimes without even calling it out beforehand. Almost no coach in the league has the roster versatility to adjust their defense on the fly like that Spoelstra does now, and nobody else can truly copy it. Here is the wild part, though. The biggest payoff from this defense might actually come on offense. Last season, Miami finished 14th in defensive rating while playing at the absolute fastest pace in the entire NBA. That is crucial because it proves they were already great at getting stops without slowing down. Now, they are adding a former Defensive Player of the Year without losing their best defender. You can clearly see where this goes. We are talking more stops, more deflections, more loose balls, more defensive boards, and most of all, more chances to strike before the opponent can even set their defense. Very few players in NBA history have been quite as terrifying in transition as Giannis. If you give that man an open floor, there might not be a single player better at making you pay. Factor in Bam's ability to secure the rebound and push the pace himself to ignite Miami's fast break, and the Heat become an absolute nightmare every time they force a missed shot. Just picture two 7-foot athletes sprinting down the floor while 5 defenders scramble to find a body. Most teams simply are not built to stop that in a 5-second window. That is what truly elite defense does for you. It shuts down buckets on one end and hands you easy transition points on the other. Honestly, it would be a shock if Miami did not finish as a top 5 defense this year. That defensive ceiling alone drags the Heat out of the play-in tournament and right into the Eastern Conference playoff conversation. But defense probably will not decide this season because to acquire Giannis, Pat Riley had to surrender the exact type of rotational players that this newly constructed roster is now desperate to find. Despite all the defensive juice on this team, the actual question mark is not on that end. It is the offense. Even before the blockbuster Giannis trade, shooting was already a major concern. Sure, the Heat were decent from 3 last season. They were not great. Even with Tyler Herro and Norman Powell knocking down shots, anyone watching could clearly see this team desperately needed more high-volume shooting to space the floor. Then the trade hit, and to land one of the best players on earth, Riley completely emptied the tank. Herro is gone, Jaime Jaquez Jr. is gone, Kel'el Ware is gone. Norman Powell walked away in free agency, and any lingering dream of a LeBron reunion died the exact second he chose Philadelphia. Just like that, Miami waved goodbye to roughly 41% of its three-point production from the 25-26 season, including their 2 best volume shooters. What they got back was Giannis. Even in an injury-shortened season, he averaged nearly 28 points, 9.8 rebounds, and 5.4 assists on an absurd 62.4% from the field. Nobody else on this roster is sniffing that level of production. He is the focal point of absolutely everything now. And that is phenomenal news for Bam. With opposing defenses selling out to stop Giannis in the paint, Bam should get cleaner looks than he has seen in years. That means more room to operate, more short roll opportunities, and more chances to attack a scrambling defense before it can recover. It is easy to picture the most efficient offensive season of his career. But here is the major problem. Neither of them can shoot the 3. Giannis never developed a reliable jumper, and this deep into his career, that is not suddenly going to change. There is no doubt Bam has stretched his range, hitting almost 10 times as many threes over the last 2 seasons as he did in his first 7 years combined. But volume is not the same as makes. Out of 98 players who have taken at least 600 threes over the past 2 years, Bam ranks 89th in accuracy. That is not a shot at the work he has put in. It is just the reality defenses are going to plan around. Real quick before we jump back into it, And just so we are totally clear up front, this is only for you if you have the financial means and can keep it fully responsible. This video is proudly brought to you by Prize Picks, America's #1 sports pick app. If you have never used it, it is honestly the easiest game around. Simply pick more or less on a couple of player stats, lock in your lineup, and you are done. If you would rather back a team, they have that now too. Just pick the straight up winner, the point spread, or the game total on any matchup or fight. For my picks today, I am going with Caitlin Clark more on made threes and A'ja Wilson less on combined rebounds plus assists. Prize Picks is readily available in most states, including California, Texas, and Florida, and they just completely refreshed their new user offer. So there is truly no better time to jump in. Play your first $5 and get $150 in lineups if you win. Just use code HMA when you sign up, and that is it. Win that first lineup, and the $150 is yours. Once again, only if you can afford it and are keeping it responsible. Play smart. Code HMA at signup. Links in the description. Now, let us get back to it. So Miami's two best players both live inside the arc. Normally the fix is pretty obvious, you just surround them with shooting, except to get Giannis, they couldn't. The Heat shipped out most of the perimeter shooting this roster needs the most right now, and that struggle might just be the whole ball game this season. Now, both Giannis and Bam are going to generate plenty of open looks. That is exactly what happens when two guys draw this much heavy attention around the rim. But creating the shot is only half the battle. Somebody actually has to knock it down. And opposing defenses have to actually respect those shooters enough to stay home on them. Because the more the defense is forced to hug the perimeter, the more absolute freedom Giannis gets to do the one thing he does better than almost anyone in history: attack downhill. That has always been the winning recipe. Back in Milwaukee, the Bucks packed the floor around him with shooting bigs like Brook Lopez, Bobby Portis, and later on, Miles Turner. Those guys consistently pulled opposing centers away from the rim, and that is what gave Giannis a clean runway to live in the paint. Bam is a different animal, but give him credit. He stretched his game out and nearly doubled his three-point rate last year. But being willing and being reliable are not the same thing. He still only shot 32% from deep, and opposing defenses are not going to treat him like a stretch five. They actually have to chase out of the paint. So that piles an immense amount of pressure onto everyone else, and right now the Heat simply do not have many high-volume shooters. Out of the returning rotation, only Fonteo took at least 6 threes per 75 possessions last year. Tim Hardaway Jr. adds another willing gunner after firing 9.5 attempts per 75 with Denver, but past him, proven spacing gets thin fast. Just think about those Bucks teams that actually worked around Giannis. They were never just Giannis and a bunch of role players. Players like Chris Middleton and Drew Holiday gave Milwaukee some serious secondary shot creation. Those are two totally different skill sets that stop defenses from loading up on Giannis every single trip. So, if teams do not fear Miami's shooting, they will pack the paint and build a wall. Which is pretty funny because that is exactly what the Heat did to him for years during the playoffs. The big difference now is that Miami has to make opposing teams pay for it. That is the massive contradiction sitting right at the center of this roster. The Giannis trade blew the doors off playing purgatory, but in the exact same breath, it created a spacing problem that could hang over their entire season. Here's where things get really interesting though, because Miami's supposed weakness might not actually be as scary as it looks. Let us start with the coach. If there is one guy you would trust to solve this exact problem, it is Erik Spoelstra. He has built a Hall of Fame career squeezing elite offense and defense out of rosters that made absolutely no sense on paper. And this shooting might actually be better than people think. Sure, this is not a knockdown shooting team, but it is a very long way from a squad that cannot shoot at all. Devon Mitchell and Andrew Wiggins both shot over 40% from three last season, while Fonteo hit 38%. Both Bam and Pele Elson have taken some very real steps as shooters over the last 2 years. Then throw in veterans like Tim Hardaway Jr. and Bobby Portis, who each shot north of 41% from deep last season. The cupboard is definitely not bare. On top of that, every single one of those guys just received the best possible gift. They are playing with Giannis now, and almost nobody in league history bends a defense like him. Every drive drags help into the paint, and every transition run completely collapses the entire defense. And nearly every possession opens up somebody on the perimeter with absolutely nobody in their face. We have watched it play out. The Bucks actually led the NBA in three-point percentage in games Giannis played last year. And Milwaukee sat right near the top of the league in both three-point volume and accuracy for most of his prime. His massive gravity simply changes the math for everyone. The only real question is whether Miami has enough guys to cash in, and there is a very good chance this roster is not even finished. If the Heat truly want to get the absolute most out of this roster, adding one more reliable shooter before opening night would go a very long way. Whether the right guy shakes loose remains to be seen, but Miami has already been linked to a familiar name, Klay Thompson. This is not the Klay who was splashing threes next to Steph in his absolute prime. But even now, he remains one of the purest shooters in the entire league. He's the kind of guy a defense cannot leave alone for a single second. Next to Giannis, that gravity might be worth even more than it looks. A shooter like that pulls a defender all the way out to the arc, and every single foot the defense stretches is another foot of clear runway for Giannis at the rim. Even if nothing else happens, though, Miami's real competitive edge is right there on the sideline. Erik Spoelstra is the longest tenured coach in the NBA, and he has spent almost 2 decades doing what almost nobody else can do consistently, getting far more out of a roster than anyone thought was in there. We have watched it. Back in 2020, he took a team carried by role players all the way to the finals. Then, 3 years later, he did it again, dragging an 8th seed to another finals with a rotation nobody outside Miami believed in. He has been handed spare parts his entire career, and he just keeps turning them into contenders. Wringing absolutely everything out of his guys is basically his signature. Now, he finally has something he has not had in over a decade, a legitimate top 5 player. That is exactly what makes this offense so exciting to imagine. Last season, Miami leaned away from heavy pick and roll plays, focusing instead on isolation and attacking downhill in open space. We never got to see how that style would actually hold up in the playoffs, but Giannis might be the perfect guy to take it to a whole new level. Nobody attacks open space quite like him, so does Spoelstra stick with that identity, or does he rebuild the entire system around Giannis? Based on his own words, probably a little of both. When talking about how versatile Giannis is on the offensive end, Spoelstra said he would find new ways to use his talents, though Giannis has already done almost everything. He runs pick and rolls up top with big men, pick and rolls with guards, and does the same damage out on the wings. And if we know one thing about Spoelstra, it is that whenever he has coached elite athletes in vertical lob threats, he has never been shy about designing an offense that plays way above the rim. Now, with Giannis and Bam sharing the floor, he suddenly has the perfect roster for a system that looks nothing like the Heat teams of the last few years. Honestly, this group almost feels like 2 different teams. On the defensive end, you can close your eyes and see exactly what they will become. They will be long, physical, and highly switchable, forcing turnovers and turning stops into easy transition buckets. The offense, however, takes a little more faith. There is certainly plenty to be excited about. Giannis solves their biggest issue by giving Miami a true superstar, and his gravity should open up much cleaner looks for everyone. But all the spacing, the secondary shot creation, and the late-game playoff shot making will not truly be answered until April, when it actually counts. And with 3 roster spots still left open, Riley probably is not finished yet. This blockbuster trade was not about just sneaking into the playoffs. Miami did this to win right now. So no, this is not last year's Heat team with Giannis bolted on. It is a completely different squad. Whether it works comes down to one key thing. Can Erik Spoelstra turn a front court of 2 big men and just enough outside shooting into a championship roster? What do you think? How far does Miami actually go next season? A first-round exit, an Eastern Conference Finals appearance, or real title contenders? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, do me a favor and hit those like and subscribe buttons and follow for more NBA breakdowns like this.